I cannot believe this. This is going to be an unforgettable day for the rest of my life. Welcome, everybody, to North Dakota. Do you know what this is? Do you know what this means? Well, yes, obviously, it's a state in the Union. It's a state of the United States, but it's the sometimes vlog, yeah. And this is an important one. I'm telling you something. I am not gonna lie to you. For a little while there, I was struggling not to get all choked up and all emotional, because do you know what this means? Me standing here at this sign on the boundary of the state of North Dakota, this means I have officially crossed into my 49th state. 49th, which also means I have completed all of the lower 48 states in the United States. Now, obviously, of course I was gonna miss this, so I filmed it and put it into a Randomland episode, but I am speechless and out of breath sounding, not because I've been running around through the fields here in the wonderful prairies, but because I got all choked up and emotional and excited because I did it. I cannot believe I did it. I have now traveled to every single one of the 48 states, the contiguous, the touching states, the lower 48 of the United States. I have also been to Hawaii when I was about 14, so I really need to be heading back to Hawaii. Maybe someday somebody will let me ride on their boat or something. And I've never been to Alaska. So that makes 49 states and only one missing state. I didn't even go, man, oh my gosh, hold on, let me collect myself here. You are seeing me in the pure, raw, unedited wholesomeness of this crazy moment here. I've been traveling my entire life. As a matter of fact, when I was like, I don't know, 4 years old or something like that, my parents took me on a little flight, the only flights that I know of in my mom's life, to Canada to go see some family up there. So before I ever even ventured off into another state of the Union, being born in Southern California, I actually visited another country and went to Canada to see relatives. But of course, I was 4 years old, so I barely remember that. The first state I ever went to besides California was Arizona as a kid. And then my parents took us to Oregon and Washington and up to Vancouver, Canada, and back down on road trips and different stuff. But it wasn't until I was about 16 years old, I finally got a driver's license. I had a little green Aerostar minivan that my parents were trying to sell. They didn't need it anymore. My dad had a different car. My mom had a different car. They're trying to get rid of the thing, but they never did manage to get rid of it because I turned 16 and took it for myself. I took it selfishly. And then later when I was on tour, they took it back and then they gave it to my aunt, which honestly, it was, yeah, she deserved it. Anyways, she had a large family. She had to tow kids around. You need an Aerostar for things like that. Aerostars are good cars for kids. Too bad Ford doesn't make Aerostars anymore. But this isn't about Aerostars. Anyways, when I was 16 years old, I started hanging around with bands, hanging around with rockers and musicians. And I did my first kind of cross-country trip by car over to Illinois, and so I traveled all the way through Utah and Colorado and Nebraska and drove, I think, mostly I-70 all the way to Illinois and then back home. And I was just, from that moment on, I was hooked. And then being in bands, all I ever wanted to do was get in our pirate ship and go on tour and travel and see things and see the country. The whole time we were in a band on tour, we were the weirdest bands. Every van that I was in with, it doesn't matter what the band was, but particularly with the Scarred, every other band thought we were so weird. Nobody wanted to travel in convoy with us because we would stop all the time. And that was because of me. I insisted that we stop all the time. We're in Gettysburg. We got to go see the battlefield. We got to go see this, there's a giant prairie dog or this or that or the other thing, giant concrete dinosaur, whatever the case may be. Got to stop at Pee-wee's Dinosaurs every single time, all that kind of stuff. And so bands hated us. They're like, geez, get to the next town, get to the next show. But here's the thing, as widely traveled as I was then, we never came up to certain states because back in the day, it was super hard to, oh, is a car actually stopping right here? Weird. It was super hard to get shows booked up in Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota. And so I had never been farther west up north than Minneapolis. Or no, I guess we went up to Wisconsin at some point. Where did we play in Wisconsin? No, it was Milwaukee. So really Minneapolis is the farthest to the west up there that I ever got. And the farthest east was probably, I don't know, Boise maybe or something like that. And we never managed to make it to Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, or anywhere north of Massachusetts. So we never made it to Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, North Dakota, South Dakota, or Montana. 6 states in the lower 48 that I was missing for years and years. And within the past year, it was only this past fall that Allie and I went on a trip to New England. She's always wanted to go there. She wanted to see the pretty colors and the fall leaves. And so I finally dipped the toe in New England. We landed in Massachusetts, in Boston, and then we went up to New Hampshire. We stayed up there for a little bit. We crossed over into Maine. We drove a little bit through eastern Maine, and then we cruised over to Vermont and then back down into Connecticut and hung around, saw Mark Twain's house. We did a bunch of stuff over there. But that completed the East Coast states. And so ever since then, I've been brooding. I don't know about brooding, but I've been sitting, not sulking or brooding, but I've been sitting there thinking, just meditating on the fact, maybe a little bit of brooding, thinking about, I'm so close. I'm so close now. I've been to almost every state in the United States and really close to completing all the states in the lower 48, right? All the contiguous, the touching states of the United States. And I realized I just need Montana and North Dakota, because last year, actually a little bit less than a year ago, about 11 months ago, I crossed into South Dakota. We went and visited the heads. We went and visited Mount Rushmore. London and I, my son and I, we went to South Dakota. We went to the Black Hills for just a couple of days. We went to Rapid City. We went to see Mount Rushmore. And then ever since then, really, I've been thinking about it. And then we went to the fall to New England. And so just within, there was all these states I had never been to for years and years. I had been to every other state for years and years and years. And somehow in the last 11 months, I have conquered, let's see, Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, right? South Dakota, now Montana and North Dakota. So 6 states that I have never been to. All the rest of them I had been to by age 23, 24. So all this traveling, all the Randomland traveling, the going to Florida, the road trips, the cross country, every single thing that I've done until last year, 11 months ago when we crossed into South Dakota, all of that traveling, all of that adventure is all states that I had been at least, to play a show, or at least driven through, that kind of thing, at least maybe spent the night in a hotel inn or something like that. But just in the last 11 months, I've crossed the final 6 states off of the list. And I think that's why, I'm not sure why I feel emotional. I mean, big deal. You walked over, you drove over some lines, big deal. But it was always a dream of mine to travel, to see things. My parents totally put that into me with the road trip things. And one of the things they would do, they didn't have any money. And one of the few things that we would do is on the weekends, they would take us out to like Irvine Park, and we go driving around in the canyons, east of, Orange County cities, and just go for a drive. Just go see the scenery. Look out the window. Stop looking down at a book. Just look out the window. Enjoy the scenery rolling by. All those different trips. And my mom trying to get us interested in the local plants and the history and all that kind of stuff. My dad's always been really interested in history and the History Channel and all these different things. And my mom always encouraging me to read. And so even on tour with the punk rock band, where everybody else was just interested in get me to the venue, let's get beers, let's do whatever. All I was ever doing, especially when the internet first started coming around, when we first started to get internet on cell phones, which was crazy, I would take a flip, what was it called? The Sidekick, a thing that the screen flipped out. So my ex got a Sidekick for Christmas. Well, what the heck are we going to do with this? We paid this huge bill to have this Sidekick so that all it could basically do was send emails. You couldn't really load images. There really wasn't much music or anything like that to load at the time. It was like a brand new one when it first came out. But one of the few things you could get to load on that thing sometimes when you had great cell phone signal was Wikipedia, which was brand new then. And I remember every town we went to, I was a big contributor to Wikipedia actually when it started. Not a big contributor like I got a top hat. I was one of the founders. No. I just mean everywhere we would go, if there wasn't an article about something, I would start a new article and all that kind of stuff. Because I'm like, this thing is so cool, an encyclopedia, but you don't have to buy it from a door-to-door salesman. You mean there's an encyclopedia online that's going to have everything in it? I want to keep adding to the everything. I can't even think of articles that I initiated. Maybe Ali Earp. Which is Virgil Earp's wife, just different articles about different people, stuff like that. So anyway, I would just, we'd be in, I don't know where, name a place. We'd be in Jackson, Mississippi or whatever, and I'd just be reading all about Montgomery, Alabama, and I'd be reading about Rosa Parks and I just any kind of gap in my knowledge. And then I would get inspired by like little tidbits or little teaser stuff on there, because obviously Wikipedia doesn't go into great detail. Well, sometimes it does, but most of the time it doesn't, especially back then. The articles are really short, and I would just get like, oh, it's cool, it's notable because, you know, notable history, or that little history section, and I was, oh, cool. And then I would get inspired to like buy a book or something, so I'd be like reading in the van, like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. I have to read a book about everywhere that we went, and I have to get obsessed about all the places. Unfortunately, going on tour, what would happen is, and anyone who's ever been in a band on tour, especially with no money, can vouch for me on this. Unfortunately, on tour, one of the things that would happen is, well, really the way it works is you roll into town to play a show, right? And maybe you've been driving all day like this. You've been driving. We would tend to do the drive all day, get to the show thing. You had two options. You could drive. Man, it's really weird light out here. You could drive it's because we're so far north, I'm not used to it. You could drive all the way, all day long, and get to the show at night, at the finish of the day. Or you could, you know, how am I trying to, I'm so flustered. How am I trying to word this? You could either play the show, stay in that town, drive all day the next day, get to the place, play the show, stay in the town, or you could do the drive all night, stay in the town where you're gonna play, wake up, you know. Either way, you're rolling into town. Why did I go off into that whole digression? I really can't think out here. The last two sometimes vlogs, I've been so flustered and crazy, but you'll have to forgive me. I didn't have time to build this vlog to scale or to paint it. I'm just here to share my thoughts and feelings with my bestest friends over here. My bestest friends. So anyway, we roll into town, and we're probably getting there, you know, 7, 8 o'clock. The goal is usually to not have to wait in a parking lot all day before the venue opens. So we would be driving and roll up into some town at 7 or 8 o'clock at night. The show starts about then. You'll load in your stuff. There is no sound check in like crappy punk clubs and bars and weird places that we would play 99% of the time. So you're just hanging out with the kids that are there for the show. If we played first or early in the set, we go on. Usually they put us last because they're like, well, an out-of-town band, we'll put them on last, put them with a bunch of local bands. And so we'd play at like, you know, 11 o'clock, midnight. Even if we weren't playing late, we'd have to stay late, try and sell as much, you know, t-shirts and stuff as possible to get money for the van, to a little gas to get the heck out of town. We didn't even have money for hotels ever. We slept in the van the vast majority of the time, I would say. Well, we slept in people's houses and the van equally. Hotels were reserved for very rare occasions, like when I was so sick with the budding and blooming celiac disease I didn't know I had yet. Yay! When I would be so sick, or somebody would be sick or get strep throat, or something. Anytime someone was sick, that's the only time we'd be like, oh my gosh, we have to get a hotel. What do we do? All the rest of the time, we could not afford it. So I spent, if you look at the pie chart of my life, the amount of time I spent living and sleeping in a van would be a visible chunk of the pie chart. It was a lot of nights on the road and all that kind of stuff. So maybe that's why I have the affection for the old van there. That is my midlife crisis. Could be worse, right? Could be mistresses and sports cars and I don't know what, gambling, who knows. But I decided I wanted to travel in a junky old van again. Relive the old days, which I have been. The thing breaks every once in a while, you have to keep fixing it. You're like, oh yeah, he sucks up gas like nobody's business. Like, oh yeah, I remember this. I don't remember gas being this expensive in 2002 or 3 and 4 and whatever, but you know, other than that, oh, it's a very familiar feeling. Anyway, you'd roll up into town and you'd stay at the show till 1 or 2 in the morning. And that's when like maybe some kid from the show is like, oh, you can come back to my house. You go to the Del Taco or whatever's open late in that town. You're driving around. All you see of these towns are the bad neighborhoods or the low price neighborhoods, meaning like the punk venues were always like cheap places. Somebody opens a punk venue, it's not a ritzy, it's not the Ritz, right? So they're gonna go find the cheapest warehouse district, the place with the cheapest rent, some abandoned warehouse, whatever it is, and that's where you play your punk rock show. Or sometimes you're in the weird old downtown that's half abandoned. And so basically what I'm saying is when you get out of there at 2 in the morning with all the other bars closing, you weren't meeting the cream of the crop of the folks all the time in the town. You weren't seeing the town at its best. And so it wasn't until, so even though I traveled all the time, right? So even though I traveled to all those states, all those crazy, there's a bird over here making crazy loud noise. It's got red on its wings. It's angry. It's angry. So even though I traveled to, how many states did I say? 43 states or whatever it was in all those years in the band, and saw a lot from the road, saw a lot from the van, saw a lot at roadside stops and things. As far as cities go, I didn't really get to see that much. I didn't really get to see the best, most awesome stuff, as I alluded to in the last Sometimes vlog, until traveling with Randomland. Like there were certain towns, like I hated Albuquerque because wherever we played in Albuquerque, except the launch pad, that place was pretty cool downtown. I was like, it was the middle of the night, it's always dark, and it's like, well, it's all dry weather and hot. It's still hot at night and that kind of thing. And so when I went back finally with Randomland and got to go back to Albuquerque and see the old town and really interact with people down there, and I was doing the whole Route 66 thing, I'm like, oh my gosh, I love Albuquerque. I love this town. I love these people. And it was like that with a ton of other places. I always love traveling. I always love going to different places. I prefer the middle of nowhere places, really, to big towns and big cities. And that's why people are always like, are you going to this big coaster park? No, I really don't have any interest. I can't film on roller coasters for the most part. I don't really want to just do chest harness videos of POV roller coasters. That stuff is cool, and it's not that I don't like riding on roller coasters, but my whole thing is theming, history, context, all that kind of stuff. If a theme park has some kind of creative story, some interesting background, some historical stuff like Knott's Berry Farm, or with Disneyland with all the theming and the kind of creativity that went into creating it, or Enchanted Forest, where it's sort of a auteur, like a project of one crazy madman who wants to build this cool creative thing. That's what gets me going on theme parks. Just a bunch of iron roller coasters kind of out of kids. I mean, that's interesting. The engineering and stuff I'm sure is fascinating. It's just not my thing so much. So that's why, for some of you who've been asking, you're like, hey, Idaho, you gonna go to Silverwood? Like, probably not. Like, maybe one day if I can, if I can slip in there and check it out, that'd be cool. But unless there's dark rides at a place, roller coasters, and then just walking around looking at the theming in the roller coasters. Maybe, it just depends. It depends on what's there. That's a whole separate conversation. Anyway, I'm kind of blown away. I'm just thinking of all the places I've been, all the miles and miles these weary feet have traveled and pushed gas pedals through and flown through and landed in, and I'm just taking it all in. I'm taking in the fact that we're just crossing out of Montana, which might be the most beautiful. I mean, California has some really beautiful scenery. New England also very beautiful. Pennsylvania is one of the most gorgeous places you can ever hope to drive through. All the back roads and Amish farms and the woods and all that stuff. California redwoods, Yosemite. But I don't know, pound for pound, Montana might have been the most beautiful state, or one of top 3 most beautiful states I have ever been to. And don't get me wrong, New England was also beautiful in the fall with the fall color, but most of the time it's covered with snow. But then again, so is Montana half the year, right? Covered with snow. So, and I'm not a fan of snow, so I don't count snow seasons, although it is very beautiful. I must give it that. Anyway, I don't want to debate the relative beauty of states out here on the side of the highway. I got to get going and find some shelter for the night. I had to make this decision at the last second. I literally sat in front, much like I did to leave on this road trip, as I told you about yesterday, or the last video. I was sitting in front of the van looking at it going, where am I going to go? And decided to come up this direction to go to Montana since I had never been there. And this morning I had a choice. I was either going to go to the origin point, the place where the phrase was coined, where Sean Connery uttered the immortal words, go home and sleep well. Or I was going to come and complete the 49th state that I need to get to all 50, and the last state that I need to do the lower 48, North Dakota. And I literally made the decision this morning as I was staring at the van after it was all packed up and everything, was which way am I going? And the deciding factor wasn't just my need for strange accomplishments. The deciding factor was, excuse me, whoa. The deciding factor was the weather. So Sean Connery, that whole scene in the movie, there's a scene in the movie The Untouchables. If you don't know where the go home and sleep well comes from, there's a scene in the movie The Untouchables where they have to go to this bridge that crosses into Canada and catch the smugglers and try to get the accountant, and they're gonna bust Al Capone, right? I can't even remember all the plot details right now. I'm just so excited by other things on the side of the highway, so forgive me that I'm not recounting everything in its proper order. Anyway, they've got to go there and they've got to fight the mobsters on the Canadian border, and there's this bridge that crosses a river. It's not actually the Canadian border. It's actually in this tiny little town that doesn't exist when you type it in on the map in Montana. It's this bridge in Montana, and they built this fake cabin that they could open up so they could film the guys in the cabin and then slide the camera outdoors, and you'd be outdoors and then slide the camera back in or whatever. And they're waiting in this cabin for the bus. They're waiting for Capone's guys and the smugglers to come across the border or whatever. And they're there with the Mounties, and they got the U.S. guys. And they're gonna bust it. They're gonna bust the smugglers. They're gonna bust them. They're gonna bust that smuggling ring wide open. They're gonna bust it open. And they're waiting in the cabin. They're all restless. And Sean Connery starts walking around and giving all the speech like, "Did you check it about the gun?" You know, he's like, "Yes." Sure, don't check it again or whatever. He starts to go, "You cold? Stamp your feet." There's all these crazy little sayings that he does. Then the big raid, which Adam the Woo and I quote all the time, and I'll get to him in a second. And then there's a whole scene with the raid, and they do the whole thing. They come back to the cabin, and there's a guy that Kevin Costner's character had to shoot. And so he's dead, kind of on the back porch of the cabin. So Sean Connery comes up, he's got his hands in his pockets, la-di-da, you know, and he looks at it. He looks at the dead body, and he's as dead as Julius Caesar. He's as dead as Julius Caesar. Pretty funny line. And Kevin Costner says, I had to kill him. And Sean Connery goes, would you rather it was you? And he goes, no, I would not. And then Sean Connery goes, well, then you've done your duty. You can go home and sleep well tonight. Like it's no big deal, right? Well, years ago, my friend Adam the Woo from Florida, Adam the Woo here, that's my Adam the Woo impersonation, came out to California. It was one of his earliest trips to California, and he was staying on my couch when he was living in the van and all that stuff. So we get a reprieve from the van. We were hanging out in the house, and he brought up the Untouchables, which I hadn't seen in a long time. Like, yeah, it's such a great movie, whatever. So we start watching the Untouchables. Oh, what about that great scene where he's like, he's as dead as Julius Caesar or whatever. So we watch that scene, and as we're getting towards that scene, we're taking breaks. I don't remember what we were doing. Adam's like, go home and sleep well. He tells him, you go home and sleep well. Like, quoting it wrong, right? Go home and sleep well. It was really catchy and funny. We got to the scene, which is funny. It was just hilarious. It is, go home and sleep well tonight, right? Hilarious, funny scene. But Tyler Evans, who was living with me at the time, classic Tyler, and I, were like always quoting that to each other after Adam left. So Adam's like always Adam is the one who was misquoting the movie as go home and sleep well. Go home and sleep well. All right. We all love a good Sean Connery impersonation in this group of friends, but Adam's the one that would always get that line because the real line is go home and sleep well tonight. Anyway, this is taking way too long to tell this story. So then kind of being silly, not mocking Adam, because we love Adam. We love Adam. Adam, we love you dearly. But just kind of like, go home and sleep well. Like in the middle of anything, Adam and I would be joking with each other, quoting that movie, because it's just so, his impersonation of it was so silly and funny and ridiculous and over the top, compared to the, for once, actually understated performance of Sean Connery's actual line in the movie. Go and watch the movie. You'll see he's just like, go home and sleep well tonight. But for some reason, Adam was like, go home and sleep well, right? And so anytime for the next week or whatever, however long Adam was staying, we go to Knott's, we're going to Disneyland, wherever we were going, checking out sites, filming locations, whatever we were doing, Back to the Future stuff, Pee-wee. I can't remember all what we were doing at that time, but wherever we would go, he'd be like, oh, did you get a Mountain Dew? I'd be like, yeah, I got a Mountain Dew. Then you've done your duty. You can go home and sleep well, right? And then if he was doing something, I'd be like, oh, dude, did you remember to get gas? Yeah, I got plenty of gas. Oh, then you've done your duty. You go home and sleep well. And it got to the point where, and it's still like this to this day, it's like a buddy thing between me and him. And then Tyler was living with me, so Tyler like caught on to it. And then we're like, oh, you know what? That's the perfect ending for videos, because it's always awkward. How do you end a video, you know? You've done your duty. Go home and sleep well. So it got into the video somehow, and it got to the point with me and Adam and the Untouchables. We've quoted that movie so many times to each other that that if I see Adam, like if Adam pulled his car over right here and got out and walked up to me, like looking around, how's it going, dude, and blah blah, and walked up to me and goes, yeah, we both start cracking up. So years ago, we were up, man, 5-6 years ago now, 2017, we were going up to Idaho to film the eclipse together. And the first night, we're like, yeah, this is the last time we've ever shared a hotel. And I was like, yeah, you stay in my hotel, so I got an extra bed or whatever. So Adam's on one bed, I'm on there. We're like, we got to get up really, really early, because we got to drive all the way up to Idaho Falls. We got to go see the eclipse, you know, got to get up really early. We're going to do Napoleon Dynamite filming. Okay, we got to get up really early. Okay, we're going to get up really early. No fooling around, da, da, da. So Adam gets in his bed, I get in my bed, turn the lights off. All you hear is, yes. I don't remember if I started it or he started, probably me. One of us started, yes. And then it just starts the hysterical laughing and the, yes, go home. You've done your duty. Put it in the GD trash can or whatever. You know, all the little Sean Connery quotes from that. And then it's going to be, we go through the whole gamut of Untouchables quotes. They put one of yours in the hospital, you put one of theirs in the morgue. That's the Chicago way, right? And we run through all the Untouchables quotes. He's like, okay, we gotta go sleep now. Okay, yeah, good night, bro. Yeah, okay, see you in the morning. Da, da, da. Quiet, quiet. Somebody gets up, goes to the bathroom, comes back, it's quiet, we're sitting there. Junior, and then you get on the whole other show, and then you get all the Sean Connery from Indiana Jones, and you just go through all the Sean Connery stuff. But to this day, Adam and I will sometimes text each other pictures of Sean Connery lookalikes. And if we see each other in person, it's inevitable within the first 20, 30 minutes, somebody's going to go, yeah. I don't know why. It's because I've always, my whole life, been obsessed with Sean Connery and the way that he talks, especially because I have a Scottish family and my great-grandfather enjoyed a good Sean Connery flick. So did my dad, especially Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. And so just that Junior, you know, that accent was always so funny to imitate. And apparently it was like that for Adam. We just clicked on a lot of things. That's why we're homies. We're bros. We're buddies. And, gosh. So it was a sort of team effort, that becoming the craziest catchphrase ever. Adam was always like, you ripped me off, because apparently years before that he had said it in a video once. I think there was a turtle stuck in a pool or whatever, and he got him out or something and said he's done his duty, he can go home and sleep well or whatever. And but it's just blossomed as this funny thing between the two of us. I'm like, yeah. And then I can't remember when, at one point I said, wonderful things in a video. I used to go, wonderful things. I'd always do weird, like, and then Adam took the wonderful things, and I took the go home and sleep well, but it's cool, we're friends. So we jokingly, over the years, have been like, oh, he took that, or whatever. But it's all in good fun. Adam's a great guy. I wouldn't have been doing this. My life would not have changed so much for the better. He was a vital part of that, and I wish him well. And the reason I bring him up and the whole story up is because that's the place where I was gonna go, to the bridge, to the spot. And I thought, I cannot do it without Adam. For years, we're always like, oh, we got to go to that spot together. We'll reenact the whole scene and do the, would you rather it was you? No, I wouldn't. Then go home, sleep well, right? We'll recreate it, and I'll play Sean Connery on my channel. You play Sean Connery for your channel. We'll do the scene. We'll go to the exact spot. We'll bribe the owner of the land so we can stand on the exact spot, the whole thing. And I don't know when or how that's ever going to happen, because he's always traveling around. I'm always traveling around. I got a family to deal with. Adam's always roaming and meeting up with people. So when the worlds collide, I usually like to hang out with Adam when it's just me and him, quiet. We can just talk for like 8 hours, talk about old punk rock band days and all kinds of stuff and ideas and whatever, and not really film together as much, even though I know some of you enjoy when we do film together, and we should probably do that more. So I don't know when that's actually going to happen, but I felt like I had to text him, like, dude, on the closest I might ever get to the go home and sleep well location, I go, I kind of wanted to save it though till we could do it together. What do you think? He's like, dude, if you're that close, you should do it. So Adam was all for me doing it. But I really still felt like, man, it should be the two of us. It should be the gruesome twosome, the bros, the old school bros together. Go home and sleep. Wow. The more ridiculous you can make it, the funnier, the harder we laugh. So, and then that's where the cold, stamp your feet. You're a good cop, Giuseppe, if that's a real name. And then Adam can't say this because he's not Italian, but I can. Only a whop brings a knife to a gunfight, right? All those, see, I'm Italian, I can say that. It's not a polite thing to say. And neither is Dago or Guido or any of those other words. Don't say them, those are our words. I don't know. So anyway, but yeah, we'll do all those things together. Anyway, so I really wanted him to go to the bridge with me. That wasn't in the cards. He's in California, ironically enough, and I'm out here. And so I was determined, well, Adam gave me the blessing. I was going to tell this story, do a whole Randomland video just at that spot and just tell this whole story. I knew nobody would watch it or care, except for a few of you quality folks out there. But I figured, yeah, it'll be fun. It'll be a bucket list thing, right, to go out there. But as I was staring at the van this morning in 49th state, go home and sleep well. Well, go home and sleep well. It's got to be go home and sleep. I mean, when am I ever going to get there again? I got to go home and I've got to do my duty so I can go home. Hello, and sleep well. Friendly North Dakotans welcoming me. Anyway, and then I looked at the weather. Raining all day out there. Raining all day tomorrow. Raining all day the next day. Cloudy, thunderstormy. And I was like, ah. 49th state it is. So here I am, North Dakota. I told you about the path I didn't travel. What's funny is now some of you are going to be disappointed, and I'm going to feel a little bit disappointed that I didn't go see the go home and sleep well yet. Because one day I'll get there, friends. I hope. Fingers crossed, we'll get there. But it's funny because whenever I don't do something, I learned really early, don't put in your videos, right? You're filming a video, you're going somewhere, something's closed or something. and you're all bummed. I didn't film that thing, and I really wanted to have a video about this up, and it didn't work out, and I didn't get to post that video this week. I had to post this different video. Never explain that, though, because people don't know what they missed. Only I know what I missed. And if I talk about it, then other people are like, oh, man, I wanted to see, right? I don't have to disappoint everybody else by explaining, so I'm sorry if I disappointed you all by explaining what I didn't get to do. But I am excited to be here in North Dakota, the flattest, most boring state in the Union to drive across as a tourist from all accounts. Not that I'm dissing North Dakota as a wonderfully beautiful scenic grassland, wonderful area with beautiful inhabitants, especially a lot of rich Native American culture and tradition and history. I'm sure it is a 100% wonderful and fascinating place to visit in depth and in detail. But everybody tells me, if you're just driving through, it's one of those, if you're passing through, it's boring states. Like Nebraska, very boring to just pass through. Last year, though, I proved that if you're willing to stop, drive long distances over the boringness, and get out, there's a lot of cool history and a lot of weird attractions and cool things in Nebraska. If you missed those episodes, I'd go back and watch them if I was you. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just saying if I was you, that's what I would do. Anyway, I've got to end this now. I've got to get a drink of water. I'm hyperventilating. I'm getting too excited. I'm getting all crazy. I've just been thinking and reminiscing and going over all the past, geez, I mean, if I've been traveling since I'm 4, then 36 years of travel. Everywhere I've been, everywhere that I felt like I wanted to go, and it's been a dream of mine to see all 50 states in the United States since I knew there were 50 states in the United States, and I'm just one step closer to that dream. And I always hated in the band years that we were missing some states, and it always ate at me a little bit, where I was like, man, I just want to say that I've done all lower 48 states. And especially once I went to Hawaii at 14 with the marching band, I've even played music in all those states. Isn't that crazy? I was like, oh, I've been to Hawaii. I have no excuse not to do the lower 48, right? And so now, pretty soon I'll have no excuse but to go to Alaska. But I don't know anybody in Alaska. I don't know what to do in Alaska. If I do go to Alaska, I'm sure I won't be able to drive all over the whole state. I probably won't be able to do a whole 2-week trip in Alaska. But if I have a long weekend in Alaska, if you're only going to one spot, where do you go? How do you get there? How do you do it? I'd like to do the Alaska Highway one day, just like I've been saving certain other historic highways for years, because I'm waiting for my son to turn 18, and we're only a year, oh my gosh, this freaks me out, but we're only a year and a half away from there, when I can either take him with me on a really long extended trip, or whatever. But I still have to worry about his school and all that kind of stuff for another year, another 2 school years. Crazy. But it's crazy how old he is. It's crazy how old I am, and how long this took, and how far I've come. And I'm just thinking about a lot of stuff. So I don't know why I roped you into me reminiscing and having scattered half thoughts, other than I wanted to share the moment with you and the weird things that popped into my head. The go home and sleep well and all that kind of stuff. I have absolutely no idea how this episode will turn out. A lot of episodes are such a distinct plan, a history or an event or something like that, or a specific roadside attraction or a specific section of road. I did not know I was coming here until this morning. And so all I filmed was like, check out my hotel, which was really cool, by the way, actually, a very cool hotel. And then I just did a time lapse from a GoPro of, I drove across Montana, now I'm in North Dakota. What happens tomorrow? I don't know. I won't stay in North Dakota long. I'm not going all the way across North Dakota. I do have to be home in about, I don't know, 7 or 8 days, maybe 9 days. And that's not a lot of time if you think about it. It's like 20, when I'm going to one certain place, and from there it's 24 hours of driving home. So it's really hard to film videos and drive 6 hours a day. So really that means heading home within a day or two, or turning the ship around to face west within a day or two perhaps. So I don't know how far I'll get to the east on this trip, but I'm also planning on, maybe if the budget allows, because things are getting kind of tight this summer, to be out in July, and if not July, out in August, also doing road tripping stuff. And we have some travel plans already in place for October, and there's all the haunts in September. So there's a lot of stuff going on this year already that I know about without having random road trips. But I want to see a lot more parts of the country than just this little jaunt out here for this week or two out into the north part of America. That weird part of America you always see on TV and you've never been to. I mean, how many of you have been to North Dakota? You know, come and tell me in the Facebook group, in the thing in the bottom, or you go to randomland.com, there'll be a link to the Facebook group, which is where we do the comments for the Sometimes vlog, just to get people involved in the Sometimes Mob Facebook. Come and join the mob. Yes, that's the Chicago way. Anyway, I got to go to the North Dakota way. So sorry for bending your ear for 34, 35 minutes, but I needed to share this with my friends, and you, my friends, are my friends. And now you know what you've done? Do you realize what you've done? You've done your duty. You can go home and sleep well.